The day of my high school graduation was so bright and cold that everything shimmered. Rows of classmates in wrinkled navy gowns shuffled in plastic chairs on the patio of Colgio San Geronimo. I stood at the edge of the platform, shivering in the thin June sun, my hands clenched behind the blue folder containing my diploma. When they called my name as valedictorian, I felt exactly the way you imagine, proud, nervous, unstoppable, my pulse like a drum in my neck. Abuela cackled from somewhere near the back, her sharp voice bouncing over the heads of the crowd. Mama nudged her, pretending to scold, but both grinned up at me, my family packed together in the last row. My little brother Farku barely looked up from his phone. Papa was not there. Work, Mama said, always work. I shook the hands I was supposed to, then stepped up to the microphone, pulling the sheet of paper from the pocket of my gown. I had thought about what I wanted to say for weeks. Words came easily to me. That was my gift, the one even my teachers grudgingly admitted. I'd won contests with stories about quiet streets after rain and kids trapped in their own skins. As I looked out, the crowd blurred into shades of navy and beige, punctuated by the bright box of Abuela's orange hat. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. When I was little, I used to write stories on the inside of cereal boxes. My mama thought I was crazy. Papa said nobody cares about stories when they're hungry, but I still dream of being a novelist. A hush fell. I remember that hush. It is the only thing I remember with perfect sharpness. Sunlight flickered behind my eyelids as I blinked at my paper. My dream is to write books that matter. I know it sounds impossible, but I believe. Suddenly someone laughed. I saw the group of boys from my economics class, the ones who sold fake ids after school, their faces scrunched with amusement. One of them muttered, un escritorcito mas que util, abstract artist, laughable dreamer. Another voice carried over, a novelist in Argentina, ya fuchi ni lo intense, don't even try. The principal reached for my elbow, guiding me away from the microphone before I could finish. For a second I was paralyzed, anger boiling in my throat, so raw I wanted to scream until the tiles cracked, but I only nodded, folding up my paper so tightly it left creases in my palm. My graduation speech ended under a swirl of laughter and a few polite, uncertain claps. Rage, thick and sour, burned through me, held back only by a thin skin of politeness. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and refused to look at anyone as I returned to my seat, my heart clawing at my ribs. Afterwards, family surrounded me in the small kitchen at home, eating slices of chocolate cake and drinking mate. Abuela smoothed my hair not unkindly, but there was a glint of mockery in her eyes. Novelist, you go and write those big stories, mhija, but maybe also study law, she. Novels are for Sundays. Farku piped up, sticky-fingered and unfiltered. No one reads books anyway, except you and that senora in the kiosk with her magazines. Mama handed me a knife to cut the cake, her hands trembling, though she flashed me a smile meant to soften the words. "Es solo una face," she told the room gently. "Si no veremos, there are many jobs for someone like her, maybe teacher, secretary later." I said nothing, swallowing rage until the taste mixed with chocolate. Every gesture felt like a performance, smiling for their sake, showing restraint when I wanted to howl. Part of me itched for their approval, another part wanted only to disappear. University was more of the same. I had a scholarship, which meant I worked twice as hard to prove I deserved it. I took every literature workshop, even when my classmates nudged each other and whispered la escritora every time I read aloud. Lecturers were kind enough, but every question about my future made me grit my teeth. Papa and I almost never spoke directly about what I wanted. On rare evenings at home, he would sigh across the table, "People need real work. Not just ideas." He would skim the newspaper, pausing to show me job ads, insurance, call centers, bank jobs, anything but stories. My first rejections came fast, magazines, little online journals, my favorite Argentine Review. "Promising voice, but not for us," they wrote. I collected the emails in a folder I called Cementerio, the cemetery. By my second year I was tired. I still wrote, always at night, words pouring out like fever. I sent them everywhere, even overseas, hoping someone would read them and see me. Really see me, not just another girl from San Cristobal with foolish dreams. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen to find Papa holding one of the stories I'd left on the counter, printed for a contest entry. He didn't look up as I hovered in the doorway, my mouth full of apologies that died in my throat. He read silently, his large, work-battered hands trembling a little on the paper. When he finished, he laid it aside and met my eyes. "You write as if you're starving," he said flatly. "Go get a job." His words landed like a slap. Rage flared, pure helpless, but I only nodded. Papa, I'll look for work." He grunted and left the room. After I graduated university, I took a job translating manuals for an advertising firm across the city, near Retiro. My stories slipped to the bottom of drawers, scribbled on receipts, written in ink on napkins. I still wrote, but only at the margins, quiet and invisible. For a while, nothing mattered but work and the long ride home on the 151. My friends stopped asking about my writing. Faku graduated and got a job at a car dealership. Abuela died quietly, her final joke whispered as she squeezed my hand. "Write me a story about a queen who never worked a day in her life." Sometimes, walking home in the dusk, I would pass people sitting in cafes reading books, and something sharp would blossom in my chest: regret, envy, rage mixed with longing. I felt forgotten, even to myself. Still, late at night when the city quieted, I wrote stories about loss, about roofs leaking in the rain, about a girl who dreamed of something fierce and true. Sometimes I hated myself for needing it as much as I did. Sometimes it was the only thing that kept me upright. It was a Tuesday afternoon, grey and summery, when the email came. I was waiting in line for a facturer at the panaderia. The message began, "Querida Martina, we are honored to inform you." I blinked, reading it 6 times before I understood that they had chosen my novel, the manuscript I had poured myself into for 3 years, for publication. A small publisher, yes, but in Madrid. They wanted translation rights. They wanted a real book with my name on the spine. I leaned against the chipped counter, dizzy. The world became sharp sugar in the air, the sticky paper bag, the sound of someone's baby crying. I could feel my heart, my ribcage, my whole body trembling. When I finally paid for my facturer, my hands shook so badly the coins clattered on the floor. Telling Mama was hardest. I waited until she was alone at the table folding laundry, the light off to save electricity. When I showed her the email, her mouth fell open, then curved up in disbelief. "From Spain," she whispered, reading the name again and again. "From Spain," I repeated, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "They're printing 10,000 copies." She sat down heavily, still holding a towel. For a long time she said nothing. I felt the old heat rise in my chest, waiting for her to tell me it was not enough, that I should keep looking for a teaching job, that this was a phase. But she only reached across the table, her hands warm and rough, pulling me into her arms. "Te lo Mauritius hace mucho my ama, right for the ones who don't dare." Publication came like rain after a drought, soft, almost imperceptible at first. The book went out into the world, and for a while nothing changed. I still rode the bus, still made mate, still wrote in the small hours. But then an email came from a reviewer in Barcelona. A writer I idolized tweeted that my book felt alive, bittersweet, so Argentine it hurts. A photo appeared on Instagram, my name on a back cover, sent by someone I'd never met. Within a year, rights sold in Brazil, Italy, Germany. I was invited, airfare paid, to speak in Madrid. Articles appeared in Clarín, then La Nación, then Pagina 12. Suddenly I was La Joven Escritora Argentina. There were interviews, photo shoots, panel discussions. Faku texted me a video of my book in a store on Corrientes. "You're famous, Chi," he wrote, tagging 3 fire heart emojis. When my publisher in Buenos Aires finally contacted me 3 years after everyone else, I was wary, stubborn. But they promised a big launch at El Ateneo Grand Splendid. My first novel in Spanish, on display in the Grand Bookstore, where as a girl I had hidden with my notebooks, where I first learned to be invisible. The invitation went out to friends and family, to the teachers who'd doubted, the classmates who'd laughed, to everyone in San Cristobal who remembered me as the girl with her head in a book. The night of the launch, El Ateneo was lit like a cathedral, gilded and bright under domed light. Shelves rose up on every wall, wrapping the old theatre in warm wood and paper. The publisher led me to a little stage just above the orchestra pit, facing rows of folding chairs. I felt the old fear, laughter, whispers, an elbow at my back, but it was different now. I was different now. The crowd gathered. Some women from my old neighborhood hovered in a nervous knot. My former principal, grey now, nodded at me from the back. Even my economics teacher, the one whose laughter haunted my dreams, came with her husband, scanning the room as though someone might recognize her. My family arrived close to the start. Mama wore her best blouse. Faku held a copy of the book, grinning, and to my surprise, behind them was Papa. He stood awkward, hat in hand. His clothes were tidy. His eyes, when he met mine, were unreadable. The event began. The publisher introduced me, embellishing for the crowd. I recognized faces from my high school graduation, older but not wiser. A silence settled as I stepped up to the lectern, the same knot of nerves curling in my stomach as all those years before, only now I had lived through everything bad they could throw at me. I spoke, not with apology but with calm. When I was 17, they told me I should choose something useful, that stories weren't necessary. This time, laughter did not come. I scanned the crowd, locking eyes with old classmates, teachers, my brother. I read an excerpt. The crowd was silent, listening, actually listening. Every word sounded truer out loud, echoing in that gilded space. I saw tears in someone's eyes, a woman in a purple coat I recognized from the panaderia. She mouthed, "Bravo!" When I finished, applause filled the theater, swelling upward, bouncing among the shelves and chandeliers. I could hardly breathe. Someone called my name. Someone else I realized was crying. I saw Papa at the back, hand raised, just a little uncertain but raised all the same. Afterwards came the signing. Old classmates pressed up with books to sign, faces sheepish or bright with envy. "I always knew you'd do something," someone lied. The economics teacher made her way forward, her hair in a tight graying bun. She didn't offer a book. She looked around as if to check no one was listening and whispered just for me. "Felicitations, Martina. It takes courage to prove us wrong." I held her gaze, my rage neither hot nor cold, just present like a fact. "Thank you," I said, steady as stone. Faku hugged me, mock serious, then grinned with the same unwavering support he'd once reserved for football. "You did it, Beluda." Mama held my head to her chest. "Forgive us for not believing sooner," she murmured. The last to approach was Papa. He held my book, eyes darting from me to the words on the cover as though afraid they might vanish. "You did this, really did it." "I did," I agreed. I couldn't keep the tremor from my voice. He handed me a battered pen, here's the one he'd always kept by the phone, and whispered, "Sign for me, Hija, your name loud enough for everyone to see." My anger flickered but did not burn me. I held it old and familiar, then set it aside. I signed my name. Afterwards we walked home through the warm Buenos Aires streets. The city, alive with night and neon, glimmered, an infinite stage. People drifted past, old and young, tired and hopeful, pockets full of dreams. At the crosswalk, Papa slowed to match my pace. His hand, rough and tentative, brushed my shoulder. "Tell me about your next novels." I smiled, the old anger softening at the edges. "I already have something in mind, want to read it first." He grinned, a small, apologetic flash. "If you'll have me." At the door under our tiny stoop, I looked back at the city that had doubted me, mocked me, tried to grind the dream out of me. My fury and restraint, years old but unbroken, had carried me here, home and changed and free. Inside, Mama brewed mate and Faku told jokes. Papa sat at the kitchen table, my book in hand. I watched them and my heart, restless for so long, finally understood what it was to return, not as the child mocked for her foolish dream, but as someone who had turned rejection into something shimmering, real and true.